time travel is an impossible thing. Despite this, we still make time travel movies and TV shows because they're fun to watch, and there are several that have been done over the years, but only one of them has a talking animal that travels through time. That would be the 1980 classic, Back to the Future, specifically Back to the Future Part 2. In the movie, Marty and Doc Brown travel 30 years into the future to the year 2015 in a time-traveling DeLorean. Upon arriving in the future, they soon discover that things are not what they expected. To put it lightly, the biggest difference was that Marty and Doc Brown had never existed in this timeline. So where did they come from? Well, this was due to Marty's actions in the first movie, which we'll get to later. But this led to a strange side effect that we just realized after watching the movie for the first time. If you've seen the movie, you may remember when Marty and Doc meet an old friend of Doc's named Jefferson. He's a homeless man living under a bridge, but he was once a scientist who helped Doc with his research. In the movie, we learn that Doc had kicked Jefferson out of the project due to his reckless behavior. As a result, Jefferson became bitter and homeless. However, at the end of the movie, Marty fixes things between the two, giving Jefferson another chance at redemption. But here's something that we never noticed before. When Jefferson talks to Doc, he refers to himself in the third person. He says, "Easy, Jeff. You don't want to upset him." He also says, "What do you think, Jeff?" when speaking to Doc. You can tell that he's referring to himself in the third person by the way he pauses after Jeff and looks at Doc for a response. It's clear that he's asking for permission to do something or for an opinion on something, but he doesn't say me or I. At first, this seemed like an odd quirk of character. We were confused why someone would refer to themselves in the third person. Typically, people who do this have some sort of mental illness. But upon further inspection, we discovered something incredible. Jefferson isn't just referring to himself in the third person, he also uses past tense verbs. When he says, "Easy, Jeff," he's using the past tense of the verb to be. This implies that he's no longer Jeff, which means he's not talking about himself. Instead, he's talking about someone else named Jeff, who is currently sitting in front of him. The same thing happens when he asks Doc for his opinion. Again, he uses the past tense, implying that he's not the one being asked. So who is? Looking back at the scene, we can see that Marty is sitting right next to Jeff, meaning he's the one who's being asked. However, this makes no sense. If Jefferson is homeless and crazy, why would he know who Marty is? Well, that's because he doesn't. Marty is actually the one who knows Jefferson, having visited him earlier in the movie. It's highly unlikely that a crazy homeless man would remember a brief interaction with a stranger, yet that's exactly what happens here. So how does Marty know who Jefferson is? Well, this is due to the butterfly effect. When Marty first went back in time, he unknowingly saved his own life. This created a ripple effect that changed many things in his timeline. For example, in the original 1955 timeline, his mother died in a car accident, but after Marty saves her life, she becomes a prominent figure in Hill Valley, even becoming mayor. This is an example of a small change causing major differences in the future, and it seems that this happened again with Jefferson. In the original timeline, Jefferson most likely became homeless after being kicked out of Doc's project. But since Marty fixed things between the two, it's possible that Jefferson could have lived a better life. This caused him to remember Marty from the future and to ask for his advice, even though he didn't realize who he was. Now, you might be wondering why Jefferson remembers who Marty is, but not Doc. This is simple. You see, in the original timeline, Jefferson only knew Doc as a friend. He wasn't aware that it was actually Doc Brown. However, when Marty travels back in time, he meets both Doc and Jefferson, meaning he becomes friends with them. So when he goes back to the future, he remembers both of them, while Jefferson only remembers him. However, there's one more detail that makes this an even bigger deal. Do you remember when Marty is hanging out with Jefferson? He takes out a pack of cigarettes and lights one up. Cigarettes were invented in the early 1900s, so they definitely would have been around during Jefferson's time. However, smoking isn't the problem, it's the way that Marty lights up his cigarette. He uses a modern-day Zippo lighter. These were invented in 1932 and became popular during World War II. They were used all throughout the 1950s and 60s, but they weren't around when Jefferson was alive. This is clearly a continuity error, but it's one that helps prove our theory. Since Marty is using a modern-day lighter, it proves that he's not from the 2015 timeline. Instead, he's from the 1985 timeline. This would mean that he traveled back in time even further than he thought. Instead of going to the year 2015, he actually went to the year 1975. If you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. In the original timeline, Marty was born in 1968, so if he traveled 30 years back in time, he should have been born in 1948. However, there was one major issue with this theory. In the 1975 timeline, there was no mention of a nuclear power plant. This is what Doc used to generate the power needed for time travel. But we later discovered that the reason there was no nuclear power plant was because of Marty. Remember how he inadvertently saved his mother's life? Well, in the original timeline, she worked at the Hill Valley power plant. It was owned by a wealthy businessman named Biff Tannen. However, in the new timeline, Biff owns a gas station. This is because his father died in a car accident. This was supposed to happen in the future, but Marty accidentally caused it to happen in the present day. As a result, Biff grew up without his father's guidance, causing him to become a bully. This is why Marty had to apologize to him in order to restore the timeline. It seems that even the smallest action can have drastic effects on the future. And this is exactly what happened with the nuclear power plant. Since Biff's father was alive, he couldn't own the power plant. This meant that there was no need for a nuclear reactor. Instead, the town could use a combination of coal and gas to produce power. This is why there was a gas station instead of a nuclear power plant. So even though Marty and Doc Brown traveled to the year 1975, they actually ended up in an alternate timeline. This alternate timeline was created when Marty accidentally killed Biff's father in 1955. However, their arrival in this timeline caused even more changes, such as the death of Biff's father. And these changes will eventually lead to the destruction of the entire universe. It seems like the butterfly effect is really starting to take hold. So it's up to Marty and Doc to fix everything before it's too late. But what do you think? Is this really what happened? Or are we reading too much into things? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. The endless void of space, the unfathomable vastness of time, the concept of traveling through the cosmos, visiting distant planets and galaxies, interacting with life forms beyond our wildest imagination. All of it has captured the human mind for centuries. But what if we could do more than just visit these wonders? What if we could actually go back in time, revisit pivotal moments in history, or even alter the course of events? The idea is both thrilling and terrifying, and yet it's one that science may soon make a reality. From theoretical physics to cutting-edge technology, join us as we explore the fascinating world of time travel. One of the most intriguing aspects of time travel is the possibility of altering the past. If we could go back in time and change even the smallest of things, we might be able to prevent wars, cure diseases, or even alter the course of entire civilizations. However, this raises a number of ethical questions. For example, if we were to go back in time and kill Hitler, would we also be responsible for the rise of communism in Europe? Or if we were to prevent the Black Death from wiping out a third of Europe's population, would we be altering the course of human evolution? These are difficult questions with no easy answers. Yet the very fact that we can even ask them is a testament to the power of the human mind and the potential of time travel. One of the biggest challenges to time travel is the so-called grandfather paradox. This thought experiment illustrates the logical issues that arise when we try to conceive of traveling back in time and interacting with our past selves. If you were to go back in time and kill your grandfather before your father was born, you would prevent your own existence. Yet here you are, clearly a product of your parents' love and lineage. So how could killing your grandfather have any effect on your own life? There are various proposed solutions to this paradox, such as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which suggests that every time you make time travel is such a cool concept in science fiction, right? It lets us dive into alternate histories or hang out with our favorite characters from the past. But what if it were real? Imagine the implications for humanity and the universe. Some of the brightest minds, like Einstein and Hawking, have theorized about it, but can we really do it? There are tons of paradoxes and ethical questions to think about. In this video, we'll dig into the theories, the ups and downs, and the moral dilemmas of time travel. So, kick back and get ready to explore the wild possibilities. Just don't mess with anything important while you're at it. Time travel is such a cool idea in movies and TV shows, right? But it's also a big deal in physics. One famous theory is the grandfather paradox, which really messes with your mind. Picture this. Someone travels back in time and accidentally kills their grandfather before their parent is born. Crazy, right? If that happens, how could the time traveler even exist? This paradox raises all sorts of questions about time and whether we can actually change the past. If we could, who decides what happens next? Does the universe fix things if we mess up the timeline? Or are paradoxes just part of the deal with time travel? It's been tackled in lots of fiction, usually with some wild solutions, but it's still a super interesting topic to think about. There are different ways to approach time travel, including changing the past, traveling to the future, and moving between parallel universes. Changing the past involves altering events in history, which can create paradoxes like the grandfather paradox we previously discussed. Traveling to the Earth has been around for about 4.5 billion years, which is a really long time, and in that time it's seen some truly amazing things. But what if I told you there was an event so strange that if it were to happen again, it would change the course of human history forever? Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to talk about an animal that traveled through time and changed history. Theseus Rex was one of the greatest kings of Greece, famous for his many victories and his intelligence. He once defeated the Persians and became the most powerful ruler in the known world. In fact, he was so popular that a playwright named Plutarch wrote down his life story so that people could learn from him for generations to come. This story is still read today, and you can learn from these stories how to become a better leader. how to make hard decisions, and how to be a role model for other people. But like all good stories, it started with a journey. Theseus was traveling to the city of Athens when he met a man who had clearly lost his mind. The man spoke in riddles and claimed to have just seen a battle between gods and monsters. At first, Theseus thought the man was just crazy, but then the man disappeared into the forest and reappeared atop a nearby mountain. The man then revealed himself to be a god named Hermes, and he told Theseus that the king of Athens had been cursed by a monster named Marathon. Marathon was a giant creature with wings that stole away maidens from the city. The king had already sent his son and many brave warriors to stop her, but none of them had ever returned. Now, Theseus had a choice to make. He could continue on to Athens, or he could break the curse by defeating Marathon. Although Marathon had never hurt anyone in Athens, the king had decided to fight her because she had stolen away his daughter and he wanted her back. After hearing this, Theseus realized that he had a chance to become a hero, so he agreed to help the king. Theseus and Hermes traveled to Marathon's cave, where they found the young men that she had taken. They were alive but trapped in a deep sleep. Hermes said that the only way to break the spell was to bring a magical flower, called the hellebore, to the maidens and then wake them up. And so Theseus set off to find the flower. When he got to the meadow where the flowers grew, he saw a bunch of nymphs frolicking about. Theseus asked them where he could find the flower, but they told him that if he wanted it, he would have to win it in a foot race. Theseus accepted the challenge, but when he leaned over to tie his sandal, one of the nymphs tripped him up. Then all of the nymphs burst out laughing. They thought they had won, but Theseus got up and easily beat them in the race and took the flower. When he returned to the cave, Irma helped the maidens break their slumber, and the grateful king rewarded Theseus with half of his from Outlander to 12 Monkeys. We all love a good time travel story. But what if those stories were true? Time travel may be possible in ways we never imagined. This is our channel, and today we're answering the extraordinary question: is time travel possible? Do you need the big questions answered? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe for more clips like this one and ring the bell for more thought-provoking content? In George Orwell's 1984, a supercomputer called the Igor machine allows Winston Smith to travel back in time and assassinate the leader of the totalitarian state that rules Great Britain in the year 1984. In the novel, traveling through time causes paradoxes and alternate realities, something we've come to associate with time travel in fiction. But can we do it in real life? In theory, yes. It's even been calculated how much energy would be required to move an object back in time. The answer is a lot. In fact, it would take the energy produced by the entire sun for about 5 days. That's because to travel through time, you'd have to manipulate the space-time continuum, and that takes energy. But if we had a way to get hold of that much power, then anything's possible. When Albert Einstein developed his theories of special and general relativity in the early 20th century, he changed our understanding of the universe forever. His ideas suggested that time isn't absolute. What appears to us as a second near an intense gravitational field could be many years on Earth. Conversely, time slows down at high speeds relative to a stationary observer. Both effects are known as time dilation. So traveling at